Okay, now that I've calmed down after that, building on the blind spot that's being demonstrated, now MPs are currently demonstrating that they are not aware of the current arrangements around safeguarding. They are not aware of their role within working together with partners, with professionals and parents to uphold the rule of law around safeguarding. Well, we already knew that. We knew that our welfare system didn't have any understanding of, duties to children or these evolving frameworks, because they are basically contained within disciplines, within elite institutions who over the last 30 years have completely disconnected themselves from these institutions, while simultaneously our knowledge in these areas has grown massively. So the situation around safeguarding now is not the situation it was when Margaret Thatcher started to reshape the political economy. We know a great deal more now, and it's this tension between this knowledge that's actually playing out here. It's actually this knowledge pressing against these institutions that's generating crisis, including the self-ID crisis. Now, the two letters that I want to bring your attention to, the first one is about academics who are being harassed, bullied, to prevent them even criticising transgender ideology. Now, I want you to read a paper by Elizabeth Anderson, which I'm going to post underneath, called What is the Point of Equality? This is long-standing. Elizabeth Anderson describes how reliance on philosophy with no structural analysis, with no reflection on power dynamics, is facilitating kind of shitty-ass disciplines and policies and systems that are actually harmful, because it remains completely blind to power dynamics, to women, to children, to the rule of law around male violence, around safeguarding, which is in fact the rule of law now. It's well established. It should be a central policy goal. Now, what Kathleen has eloquently demonstrated is that within elite institutions this disconnect is very, very deep-rooted. This is a couple of generations deep. And the first time it's been challenged is when people challenge trans ideology. And trans activists have generated a demand for conversation about these systems, but Kathleen and her colleagues can't see them because they are in institutions which are shaped by this narcissistic bullying. Now, that's going to take a while, but the consequences of that are that those academic institutions are being devalued. Those academic disciplines are being devalued because clearly there is no rigour, because they are being shaped by abusive behaviour. And that disconnect is really important. Now, the other letter I wanted to bring your attention to was one from Anna Gupta, who's from the Royal Holloway. And that was about Frontline, which is a programme of social work education that was invented under the watch of Andrew Adonis on the basis of a memo from somebody who didn't even understand social work, saying, I think we should do it this way. And so because this was within a think tank culture, because this was in an elite academic culture, this just went flying and was funded. But the government are currently funding a frontline training programme which completely disconnects social work from academia and from research. This can't be done. It never could be done. I've been following this for quite a number of years. It's part of a wider problem with social enterprise, and it's actually part of the big society problem, and it's linked to organisations like the Trussell Trust, and, I'll post the article underneath that I wrote a few years ago about it. Now, social work is not an institutional function, and because we've had, these politicians shaped by these disciplines, including the ones that Kathleen Stock's talking about, they don't know this. They don't know that this is a legal function, a political responsibility that has emerged within the political economy, that you can erode the institution, but you can't erode the responsibility. But notably, nor do Kathleen's colleagues. Now, the Frontline article is about the disconnect between institutions and the knowledge that we need, and the multidimensional understanding of inequality, how institutions function, political failure, that's supposed to warn us when the rule of law is not being observed, when institutions have become harmful. This is now in the process of generating the political crisis, which will bring us back to being aware that we need to do that. Now, Frontline is a training program. It offers a summer. It's really the letter from Anna Gupta is really, really important. But one of the functions that's really important in social work is the ability to synthesize theory to practice. So you are at street level, and you are the point at which all this harmful policy, all this harmful theory is supposed to come, and it's supposed to hit you so that it doesn't hit the person in front of you, or so that you can mitigate the harm that it is doing to the person in front of you and look at it in the wider context of other policies. This is necessary. It can't be abdicated. It has been abdicated. And, I left under Baby P when it was abundantly clear that the site of political responsibility for safeguarding politicians were not aware of. Well, I think their response to the trans ID debate has also reinforced that they are not aware of that. And in fact, the state of universal credit and the fact that it has no awareness of the rule of law is the same problem. These are all the same problem. It's about the rule of law pressing. It's evolved, and all these systems have evolved, as Friedrich Hayek said they would, outside the eye line of academics who are currently locked in a bubble being shaped by narcissistic activists. And this division is really, really important. I can't tell you how important it is. Now, one of the things that's happened is, as this has built into a wider movement, and I think we can very legitimately say this is a mass movement, existing power structures have, as they always would have done, reinforced. So elite women have banded with elite women according to their own political or academic identity, and they are looking at their own institutions and going, actually, this is not good. And that's a really good process. They are also, through the course of this crisis, being made aware of the systems that I'm discussing. So Sarah Ditum, Helen Lewis, Kathleen Stock, Rusa Watka, Karen Gala-Smith, they may not have been aware of these systems before the self-ID crisis, although many of them should have been and make their living pretending they are. But they are now showing through this crisis that they are fixing that and that is being corrected. But that doesn't mean that the answers are there. Now, Frontline was about removing something that we can't remove, and it was about undermining, and it's been given considerable weight by think tanks and academics and politicians who are not aware and do not want to discuss the actual rule of law, the actual systems that we are required to have so that safeguarding can be upheld. And it's about the way that these systems connect around these children. This is the bottom line of policy. It always has. It has been for a long time. It will continue to be. And this crisis is just pushing us back there. Now, I was talking to a woman I've been talking to a long time, because I've been talking about the fact that equality was rolled back, which is about the fact that all these elite institutions were not aware of this rule of law, and the people on the signatories of the letter that Kathleen Stock has published, they're not aware of these systems. And because they're not aware of them, they don't know that that's where the answer is. Now, Fair Play have brought attention to these systems. It's the issue of prisons, of mental health wards, of safeguarding. It's all these different, this rule of law around human power relations, around male violence, around vulnerability, around inequality. This is what we're all kind of moving towards recognising. Now, if you read Inequality and What to Do About It, there's about three, actually. Anthony Atkinson, James Galbraith, and Thomas Piketty all have similar. And that's where we are. And that's also the understanding that they're looking for. The multidimensional understanding of how institutions evolve over time around inequality. And what we're in is a crisis where these disciplines are hitting against attempts to erode these systems, and that's what the self-ID crisis is correcting. So I would advise you to read both the letter from Kathleen Stock in The Guardian and the letter from Anna Gupta about Frontline, and understand that they are both the same crisis. And one of them is about the things that those academics who are signatories on that letter cannot see. And it's that's important. And it's actually beginning to join all these dots together. Now, we should never have been put in a position where normal women, especially women like me with no resources, properly precarious women, should not have been doing the work that institutions should have done when we started to align trans rights in a wider safeguarding context. And what was abundant at the House of Lords meeting from one of the speakers, who I can't remember her name again, was that actually we have never done this. We were supposed to do it in 2009, 2010. We decided instead to do austerity. We're now coming to a point where we have to align our understanding of these frameworks, of how safeguarding equality frameworks fit. We also have to look at the role of these disciplines in preventing that. And we have to look at things like welfare economics, which has never had any awareness of the rule of law, because it looks to disciplines like Kathleen's instead of looking at the actual evolving rule of law that's discussed by Anna Gupta. And this is the tension that we're going through. And the child abuse inquiry, which is playing out in the back of everybody, out of everybody's eye line, this is also part of it. Universal credit failing is also part of it. But at the centre of it is the same women under the bell jar who can't be heard and can't be seen. And unfortunately, I've already seen it. I stood up to the far right and I was publicly denounced by 3 or 4 people who didn't know that they were arguing that the far right weren't so bad. And then you know, the person that I challenged tried to whip up Twitter shit like my fucking focus is Twitter. No. You stand up to the left when they throw Posey Parker under bus, you get the same thing. And so what should happen is, because I have to stand firm on that rule of law, those power relations should continue to do that. They should reform. But eventually, what will be exposed is the women under this bell jar, which is created by all these things. Now, when I was talking to this woman, like, who I know, the problem with system failure around domestic violence is that women are not mentioned in children's law, and they can't challenge it because they're being blamed for domestic abuse. They can't challenge it with philosophers because they don't have access to them. They can't challenge it with charities that are concerned solely with women's refuges because they don't want to say that this isn't working. They can't challenge it with anyone. They can't say that social work is making it worse because the social worker... And they're basically trapped in the bell jar going, hang on a minute, I'm essentially being tortured in the family courts and nobody can hear me. And everybody who should be listening and who should be acting isn't, because they're protecting identity. And we have to go through that process, and it's uncomfortable, and it often means that, you know, we're stood on our own. But it is moving, and this crisis is very much part of it. And the letter that Kathleen Stock has signed is indicative of the problems with academia. And the actual problem here is that it's devaluing our academic institutions, because their output is clearly not rigorous if this is what it's shaped by. And the Frontline letter is very much about the systems and the attempts to disregard the systems that do provide answers. Now, Frontline is going to fall apart because it's completely not possible. And we will get back to that point, but I thought it was worth you looking at both those letters. Regarding my very angry message to MPs, I'm fucking furious at them. And all this crisis has really done so far. Trans rights activists have served their purpose. They've lost. They can go fuck off. They got Lisa Muggeridge 9 taken down for a week because Lisa Muggeridge 9 was talking to Shaminda Giannetti. That's a friend of Lisa's. You know, they have to make shit up. They're having to resort to increasingly batshit accusations, increasingly disturbing stalking behaviour. They're going to hurt one of us, by the way. I'm really hoping it's not me. An MP's fear in this situation is a disgrace. But that's kind of, I thought that might be helpful to look at the wider situation.